Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Electra says 6 heartbreaking words to Will and leaves LA after knowing what he did. Electra is untrustworthy, what will Luna do next? After pursuing Electra, Luna murders Ivy. Is Liam going to reconsider now? Naturally, Liam might turn Ivy down now that she has another opportunity to get close to him. Ivy had heard all about the romance between Liam's brother Will and Electra Forrester. Ivy might decide to leave town and cut her losses, or she might suffer another unforgiving fate. Can Ivy become a victim of Luna Nozawa? Luna Nozawa requests that Electra Forrester move aside. Luna had already slept with Will Spencer after getting him intoxicated. This will be more than plenty to separate Electra and Will. But if Electra finds out what Luna did that led to a confrontation between them, she might support her man. Could Luna pursue Electra in an attempt to permanently remove her from the way? Let's say Luna carries out her intentions and attempts to get rid of Electra. Could Luna kill Ivy while she's trying to reach Electra by accident? What a scenario in which Luna unintentionally kills Electra after Ivy intervenes to save her. If no one else sees Luna before she tries to get rid of someone else, will anyone even think she's still alive? Bill fights to prevent his grandchild from being born in prison. Everyone is astonished by Luna's startling plan. It is with great remorse that Bill Spencer used his connections to get Luna Nozawa's pardon. But if Bill finds out that she is still alive and expecting his grandson, his pierced view will drastically change. Luna never lost hope. She was adamant that Will would be part of her post-prison comeback. As it turned out, soapy conditions made a scenario possible, and she seized it. When Sheila Carter first heard that her granddaughter claimed to be with Will, she chuckled. That occurred after Lee Nozawa hurried out of the room, appalled at her niece's sloppy response. Sheila has a history of manipulating numerous men during the day. The city of Los Angeles is quite dangerous. Luna is a cold-blooded, unrepentant double murderer, and everyone in her version of Los Angeles, California, should be afraid to stroll the streets at night. Naturally, this also applies to the region surrounding El Giardino. As viewers may remember, in the alley behind the restaurant, Sheila shot Steffi Forrester Finnegan and John Finn Finnegan, the father of Luna and her kid. More recently, Luna killed Tom Starr, the man she first thought was her father, since she felt ashamed of him due to his lack of wealth. Luna then killed Paul Hollis Hollister, a purported friend. Hollis read the letters in Tom's rucksack, which strengthened the notion that Howard's character was Luna's father, therefore she took that action. Luna now leaves the place where Lee is keeping her safe and gives Will strong-proof vodka before dancing with him. Indeed, the most dangerous criminals in Los Angeles are she and Sheila. The fantastic reaction photos of crew Morrow. The director, production crew, authors, and, of course, Morrow deserve praise for B&B. Together, they created an incredible reaction shot for Will. His reaction from a variety of facial angles when Electra Forrester informed him that she had left the party without returning was excellent. When he found out that his girlfriend wasn't with him, he was shocked. Will would have concluded that he pictured Electra with him based on the logical reasoning. He can conclude that he had a deliberate daydream because he was so buzzing. Luna Nozawa thinks she has a chance. In order to keep Luna from going back to jail, Lee operated on her, lied about her passing away while she was recovering, and has been giving follow-up care from a distance. There was nothing more Luna could have hoped for. However, Yamada's cunning persona, whose perspective on life not only reflects younger Sheila's but also Poppy Nozawa, isn't appreciative. Her heedless, stupid, and evil deeds in using Will could have the anticipated results. Why not create something dramatic after writing Luna and Will into that particular scene? Luna appears to have devised a strategy to become pregnant in order to make her next pardon-like escape from the law. Will's impossibly chic loft, sucking the oxygen from the room and leaving only the toxic fumes of a revealed truth. Electra stood amidst the curated perfection of his life, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing the indifferent city, the minimalist furniture that held no history, the abstract art that felt emotionless, and she was a statue of pure, incandescent anguish. The revelation of what he had done, the calculated betrayal laid bare by a careless text left glowing on a tablet, was not a single stab but 1,000 cuts, each one meticulously administered over months of whispered lies and performative affection. She had handed him her heart, a fragile, fiercely guarded thing she had spent years piecing back together after a lifetime of cracks, and he had treated it not as a sacred trust but as a casual trinket, a bauble to be polished for show while the real, ugly, dishonest part of him conducted its business in the shadows. He was still talking, his words a frantic, muddy river of excuses and pleas, each syllable landing like a drop of acid on her skin. It didn't mean anything, he was saying, it was a moment of weakness, a mistake, you have to understand the pressure I was under, but his voice had become a distant, meaningless hum, the buzzing of a fly against a windowpane, because her world had telescoped down to the single, devastating fact of his infidelity. She watched his mouth move, this mouth that had kissed her with a passion she believed could rewrite her stars, and she saw not the man she loved but a stranger, an expertly crafted illusion whose seams were now violently ripped apart. The memories that had been the cornerstone of her happiness, their first date under the string lights of a rooftop bar, the way he'd held her through a panic attack, the future they had painted in the quiet hours of the night, now revealed themselves as set pieces in a play where she was the only one who didn't know the script. They were not treasures, they were props, tainted and hollow. Her love for him, a force that had felt like her final, true homecoming, was retroactively transformed into a monument to her own profound gullibility. The pain was so immense it was almost abstract, a white-hot supernova blooming in her chest, threatening to atomize her from the inside out. She could feel the tectonic plates of her identity shifting, everything she thought was solid and real crumbling into dust. And in the eye of that hurricane of pain, a terrifying calm descended. It was the calm of absolute finality. The end of a story. The closing of a book whose final chapter was written in a language of betrayal she refused to learn. Will reached for her, his hand a gesture she had once craved, now a brand of fire she would not endure. She flinched back, not with hysterics, but with a regal, devastating stillness that froze him in place. The tears that had been building behind her eyes did not fall, they seemed to retreat, absorbed back into a soul that was fortifying itself for a great exodus. She looked at him then, a long, slow, comprehensive look that took in every detail of the man she thought she knew, the faint worry line between his brows, the way his shirt was wrinkled just so, the desperate, begging light in his eyes, and she was archiving him. Placing him in the past tense. Her voice, when it finally came, did not tremble. It was low, clear, and carried the chilling weight of a verdict that had been passed in some deep, unassailable court within her. It was the voice of a woman who had already left the room, whose spirit was already packing the shattered pieces of itself into a suitcase, already calculating the miles between this pain and a horizon she could not yet see. She infused those 6 words with the entirety of their history, with the weight of every broken promise, every whispered dream, every particle of trust he had systematically pulverized. They were not a question. They were not an accusation. They were an epitaph. I hope it was worth it, Will. The words hung in the air between them, perfectly formed and utterly lethal. They contained no rage, no theatrical curse, no desire for him to suffer. That would have implied an ongoing connection, an emotional investment in his future karma. This was far worse. It was a statement of profound, irrevocable closure. It was the sound of a door not slamming, but clicking shut with a quiet, permanent finality. It meant, you have traded the real, living love I offered you for something cheap and fleeting. You have broken something that was priceless, and I am now removing myself from the economy of your life. Whatever you gained from your betrayal, the thrill, the ego, the momentary distraction, I hope you can clutch it tightly in the long, empty nights that will follow, because it is all you have left. You have purchased a handful of ashes, and in doing so, you have burned down our entire world. I am now beyond the reach of your apologies, your excuses, your future regrets. I am already gone. The devastating power of the statement left him physically winded, as if she had struck him in the solar plexus. He opened his mouth, but no sound emerged. There was nothing left to say. Her judgment was complete. She turned, a movement of eerie grace, and walked out of his loft, out of his life, leaving the ghost of her presence and the echo of those 6 words to haunt the sterile perfection of his existence. she did not look back. Down in the street, the humid LA night air felt like freedom, however painful. The city of angels, of dreams manufactured and sold, had given her the greatest dream and then revealed it as the cruelest lie. She hailed a cab, gave the driver the address of her apartment, and spent the 20-minute ride in a state of numb, high-resolution clarity. She would pack only what she needed. The gifts he had given her would stay. The photos would be deleted. The playlist they made together would be scrubbed from existence. She would not burn it all in a fury, she would simply leave it behind like a skin she had shed. By morning, she was on the highway, driving east, away from the Pacific and the sunset they had loved, toward a dawn she would have to learn to face alone. The 6 words were not just for him, they were her own mantra of liberation. They were the key she had forged in the fire of his betrayal to unlock herself from the cage of his making. She was heartbroken, yes, but she was free. And in the vast, silent expanse of the desert, with only the road ahead, she began the long, arduous, and ultimately triumphant journey of understanding that his choice was his tragedy, not hers. Her worth was never, and would never be, defined by his failure to see it. Electra Forrester. Her return was not merely a homecoming, it was a direct challenge to the meticulously laid, albeit deranged, plans of Luna Nozawa, a woman whose obsession with Liam Spencer had curdled into a venomous fixation. For Luna, Electra was no longer just a rival, she was an existential threat, a living, breathing symbol of a world that had always chosen the Forresters over the Nozawas, a world that Luna was now hell-bent on burning to the ground if it meant she could rule over the ashes with Liam by her side. Her initial gambit, orchestrating a drunken night with Liam's brother, Will, was a masterstroke of manipulation, a poison pill designed to lethally infect Electra and Will's relationship from within. Yet, Luna, in her paranoid calculus, had not accounted for the stubborn resilience of love, for the possibility that Electra, upon learning of her beloved's drunken transgression, might not simply shatter and retreat but might instead choose to stand by her man, to fight for him, to forgive. This potential for forgiveness was an outcome Luna's fractured psyche could not compute, it was an variable that threatened to unravel everything. Therefore, the equation required a more permanent solution. If Electra would not be driven away by scandal, then she would have to be removed by force, permanently erased from the board so that Luna's path to Liam would be finally, irrevocably clear. This sinister resolution crystallized in the shadowy corners of Luna's mind as she stalked the periphery of a society event, her eyes 2 chips of obsidian fixed on Electra, who was a vision of effortless grace across the room. Luna saw not a person, but an obstacle. The plan was simple, almost primitive in its brutality: wait, follow, and strike when the moment was right, in some deserted hallway or a dimly lit balcony overlooking the city lights. The champagne flute in Luna's hand was steady, a stark contrast to the tempest raging within her. She was a predator, her entire being focused on the singular purpose of the hunt, her senses attuned only to Electra's movements, blind to all other players on the stage she was about to shatter. It was this terrifying, single-minded focus that sealed the tragic fate of another woman entirely, Ivy, a figure whose own complicated history with Liam had just taken another bewildering turn. Having heard the salacious whispers about Electra and Will, Ivy, ever the opportunist, saw a window cracked open, another chance to press her own suit with a vulnerable Liam. She had been weaving her way through the crowd toward him, a practiced, seductive smile on her lips, her mind racing with possibilities of cutting her losses or finally securing her prize, utterly unaware that she was moving directly into the crosshairs of a catastrophe she never saw coming. The moment arrived. Electra, seeking a moment of respite from the oppressive glitter of the party, slipped out through a set of French doors onto a secluded, vine-covered terrace, the perfect hunting ground. Luna, a phantom in a designer dress, followed, her hand closing around the cold, heavy base of a crystal decanter she had lifted from a sidebar. The night air was cool, the sounds of the party muffled. As Electra leaned against the balustrade, gazing out at the sprawling city, she was the picture of contemplative innocence, completely unaware of the death that hovered mere feet behind her. Luna raised the makeshift weapon, her arm tensed, a silent scream of rage and desperation contorting her features. But in that exact instant, Ivy, having lost sight of Liam, had also stepped onto the terrace, her eyes scanning the shadows. Her gaze fell not on Liam, but on the horrifying tableau before her, Luna, weapon raised, poised to bring it down on Electra's unsuspecting head. A lifetime of scheming, of self-interest, of calculated moves, vanished in that one primal second. Some deep, buried flicker of humanity, or perhaps simply a reflexive shock at the sheer audacity of the violence, spurred Ivy into action. "Electra, look out," she cried, and launched herself forward, not toward Luna, but toward Electra, intending to shove her out of the way. The world erupted into a violent blur of motion and sound. Luna, startled by the cry and the sudden movement, was already committed to her downward swing. She couldn't stop the momentum. The heavy decanter, meant for Electra's skull, connected with a sickening, wet thud against the side of Ivy's head as she interposed herself between the weapon and its intended target. There was no dramatic cry, only a sharp, guttural exhalation of air as Ivy's body went rigid before collapsing to the cold stone floor like a marionette with its strings cut. For a heartbeat, there was absolute silence, broken only by the distant hum of traffic. Electra spun around, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream, her eyes wide with terror and confusion, first at the sight of Ivy's prone, still form, then at Luna, who stood frozen, the bloody decanter still clutched in her hand, her face a mask of stunned horror at the botched outcome of her plan. Luna's eyes darted from Ivy to Electra, the murderous intent momentarily replaced by panicked calculation. This was not supposed to happen. This was a mistake. A colossal, irreparable mistake. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed from inside, the commotion had been heard. In a flash, Luna dropped the decanter, its crystal shattering on the terrace like a punctuation mark to the horror, and she fled, disappearing back into the shadows from whence she came, a ghost once more, leaving Electra alone as the sole witness to a tragedy that was meant for her. The aftermath was a chaos of sirens, tears, and whispered accusations. The question hanging thickest in the air, the one that would define everything that followed, was simple: would anyone believe the truth? Electra would tell a story that seemed ripped from a lurid thriller, that the presumed dead Luna Nozawa had returned from the grave not as a victim, but as a killer, and that Ivy, of all people, had died a hero, sacrificing herself to save a rival. It was a narrative almost too outlandish to be credible. Without a body, Luna's death had become accepted fact. To claim she was not only alive but a murderous specter would be met with skepticism and outright disbelief. Liam, reeling from the shock of Ivy's violent death, a woman he had loved, resented, and pitied, would be plunged into a maelstrom of guilt and confusion. Would he see Ivy's final act as the ultimate redemption, a noble death that wiped clean the slate of her manipulations? Would it change his mind about her, casting her in a new, tragic light? And could he, ever believe Electra's desperate account of Luna's resurrection, or would he dismiss it as the hysterical ramblings of a traumatized woman? Luna, now a true killer cloaked in the perfect anonymity of her supposed non-existence, watches from the darkness. She had failed to eliminate Electra, but she had achieved something perhaps even more useful. She had created a chaos so profound, a tragedy so unbelievable, that her own existence within it would be deemed a fantasy. She is a ghost with a bloodstain on her hands, and her next step is taken in the silent confidence that no one is even looking for her. The game has not ended, it has merely descended to a deeper, darker circle of hell, and Luna, the architect of the inferno, is still very much in play. Bill Spencer, a man who has built an empire on leverage and power, the weight of his decision to secure Luna Nozawa's pardon sits upon him like a leaden crown. He deeply, profoundly regrets using his formidable connections to spring that young woman from prison, a move he likely justified as a twisted favor to his son Liam or a strategic strike against an enemy. In his mind, Luna was a contained problem, a regrettable footnote in the Spencer family saga, and his intervention was a messy but necessary bit of cleanup. However, that piercing regret, that settled opinion, is a dormant volcano waiting for a single, seismic revelation to shatter its calm. The moment Bill learns that Luna is not only alive but carrying his grandchild, the next in line to the Spencer fortune and legacy, will trigger a tectonic shift in his soul, catapulting him into a desperate, high-stakes battle where the prize is not corporate dominance but the very origin story of his bloodline, a fight to save his grandchild from the unthinkable horror of being born behind bars, a A fight Luna herself has orchestrated with a chilling, Sheila-esque precision that has left everyone who underestimated her utterly stunned. Luna Nozawa, protected and resurrected by the selfless, life-saving surgery and subsequent lies of her Aunt Lee, never surrendered the hope of reclaiming her fractured destiny, a destiny she irrationally pins entirely on Will Spencer. Her post-prison comeback was always going to include him, not as a partner but as a pawn, a golden key back into the world of wealth and privilege she feels is her birthright. When a soapy, alcohol-drenched scenario presented itself, a vulnerable Will, his judgment obliterated by the intense proof liquor she plied him with, Luna didn't hesitate, she pounced with the calculated coldness of a predator. This wasn't a moment of passion, it was a meticulously seized opportunity, a diabolical gambit engineered in the shadows where Lee had hidden her. While Lee provided sanctuary out of love and familial duty, Luna's outlook, a toxic mimicry of both her mother Poppy's amoral whimsy and the legendary manipulations of Sheila Carter herself, warped that sanctuary into a command center for her next scheme. Sheila, the unrepentant double murderer who once shot Luna's own father and Steffi Forrester in a restaurant alley, might have laughed at the sheer audacity of her granddaughter's claim, recognizing a kindred spirit in the girl's carefree defiance, but even she might be stunned by the ruthless efficiency of Luna's plan. The sheer, stomach-churning danger of Luna's actions cannot be overstated. This is a woman who, out of sheer embarrassment over his poverty, murdered the man she believed was her father, Tom Starr, and then coldly executed a claimed friend, Paul.